I can sum up in 2 words what got me into English literature: Wilfred Owen. I studied his poems at A-level, and the combination of anger and compassion really reached out to me. We're going to be looking at the poem Exposure, which features in the Power and Conflict section of the AQA anthology. We're going to be using the neon lines method, and if you're not familiar with that, follow the link above to the appropriate lit hack.
Here are the first 4 stanzas of the poem. Press pause and have a read. Here are the 4 final stanzas of the poem. Again, press pause and read. Let's return to the start of the poem then and summarise each stanza. In stanza 1, Owen's writing from the perspective of himself and his fellow soldiers. He describes the bitterly cold conditions of the battlefields and also the fact that they are all anxious about being in a very still, silent atmosphere. In stanza 2, Owen describes the breeze picking up along the front line. The soldiers are hearing the far-off guns, but they feel strangely detached from the war. Moving into stanza 3, morning arrives, but it brings no comfort or hope for the soldiers, and a cold, bleak weather front is moving in. Owen compares it to another army. Still, there is no sign of engaging in any sort of battle. And in the 4th stanza, they now have bullets flying around them, but the bullets aren't as threatening as the bitter cold. Snow starts to settle in, and the soldiers watch on, very helpless. Stanza 5 sees the soldiers crouching in their trenches. They're becoming delirious from the cold, so much so that instead of seeing the snow, they start to imagine spring blossom, almost like it's a near-death experience. In stanza 6, Owen imagines the ghosts of the soldiers dragging home. They find their fireplaces, but no welcome from the people there, almost as if everyone at home has forgotten them. In stanza 7, Owen realises that the reason for them being there and for fighting is for the protection of those very homes. Nevertheless, he begins to feel that they're losing faith in God. And in the final stanza, Owen's mind comes back to the war and the battlefield that awaits them. Men are dying from the cold, and other men have to bury those men. And still, there seems no action of advancement. Nothing happens. The first of our neon lines then is the opening line of the poem. Our brains ache in the merciless ice east winds that knife us. Through this, Owen's trying to achieve a sense of the relentless agony and hardship that the soldiers face on the Western Front through a very harsh winter. He achieves this through a number of effects. Firstly, there's the use of a hexameter rhythm, which is a very long line length, to show that their suffering is very much drawn out. He also uses sibilants on the S sounds, and there are 4 of them in close succession here, merciless ice east winds, which creates a sense of the cold and icy conditions. And finally, he uses personification. The wind becomes a knife, an ongoing theme that pitches the weather, not the Germans, as their true enemy. So, if you pause the video and have a read of an example of how that point would look written up, here we go. The second of our neon lines reads, "The poignant misery of dawn begins to grow. We only know war lasts, rain soaks, and clouds sag stormy." Owen is keen to develop the idea that it is the weather and the conditions that is the true enemy of men, rather than the Germans here. He begins by using a very powerful adjective, poignant, to show how much empathy he has for his fellow soldiers. And he's also got a parallel structure of 3 successive phrases, a noun followed by a verb. And this shows the endless gloom and the fact that the weather is dragging on. Again, pause the video to read up a point that we've written as an example. Here's the third of our neon lines. "So we drowse, sun dozed, littered with blossoms trickling where the blackbird fusses." Owen wants to create a sense of the soldiers' delirium and confusion here as they confuse the snow for spring blossom and they start to dream of hope and home. He uses an internal para-rhyme with the words drows and sun dozed, using the Z sound to create a sense of them being sleepy. Also, there is some very soft imagery used of blossoms and the blackbird to create a false sense of escape. Finally, those words also have an alliterative effect, which harkens us back to the misleading spring-like imagery. Again, have a look at our example point and pause the video to read it. Moving on to our final neon lines, we've been a bit cheeky because there are actually 3 lines there, but they're 3 really important lines in the poem. For God's invincible spring, our love is made afraid. Therefore not loath, we lie out there. Therefore we're born, for love of God seems dying. Owen here then is expressing how the soldiers feel compelled to continue fighting for everything that they hold dear at home, but that doesn't stop them losing their sense of hope and their faith in God. He uses a lot of irony within these lines. He knows that hope and spring are things which can't last forever. Also, the verb lie could allude to the death of many of the soldiers, and this is echoed by the use of the word dying, which applies figuratively to the dying of their faith in God, but also literally to the impending death of many of the soldiers, which is described at the end of the poem. For this point then, why don't you have a go at writing up your own points? What you could do is pop it in the comments section beneath the video and I'll look it over for you. Owen's striking verse then moved poetry from a very conventional Edwardian era into a brave modern one. It is fantastic poetry.
See you next time for more great English hacks.